So good morning, and thank you for waking up so early for this paper. I'm a cultural anthropologist, so my perspective is a little bit different than architecture's. But I will get closer to architecture from a different way. The first point is forming meaningful spaces, creating meaningful spaces. I performed my fieldworks amongst ethnic minorities and religious minorities. New religious movement, neo-pagan movement, Eurasian shamans, New Age movement, and so on. So my ethnological and cultural anthropological fieldwork were mainly conducted in the Afghanistan and Pakistan border. You will see plenty of pictures from that territory, from Eurasia and Middle Russia, Siberia, North Scandinavia, and from Carpathian Basin. The first point, when we start the discussion between cultural anthropology and architecture, is our common denominator, the human body. The first base what forms in my concept the building construction is not mud or bricks or stones, but the human body itself, because we form meaningful spaces from human body as well. For example, in this case, circles. Circles we form, in this case, in a Transylvanian village. This is a new religious movement, Christian awakening movement centered around that guy in the middle, a vernacular prophet who has visions from the heaven and hell and so on. And they start to pray, but first they create a space between cultura and natura, divide the profane from the sacred, and they form a circle. Then another two photos. The photos are not so good because they were taken in 1997 in West Nepal. We can see the circles and the status in the middle, and then the children around, and then in the circle they can set up different positions for elderly women, for children, for the leaders of the village, and so on. But they form this space from the human body. And the other quite basic and elementary form is the line. Of course, you can see the double-decker. So this is somewhere in England, maybe in London or somehow. The queue is one of a nearly universal form how human bodies make lines and form spaces. But not only from living human bodies, but also human bodies from stones. These are their stones making a long line in the Mongolian steppe, and they are covered with their engravings, and some of them, even the head remained. There are plenty of such places in Eurasia, not only in Mongolia, but in Kazakhstan, in northwest China, and so on. They are more than 5,000 years old, and they form lines, ceremonic lines, going to probably cemeteries, but in that kurgans, graves, nobody found any human body, so it is a theory only. And then the square. When from the lines, they form squares. Or in other place, they are lines, and they form a square, and in front of the square there is another position. So we make positions from human body. And then the triangle. these are the marrying couples, and the two witnesses, and the priest or the government officer or somebody, and they form a triangle. This is also a symbolic space, but is formed from human body. But we can mention several other examples from hexagonal and octagonal shapes. And another point for the dialogue between cultural anthropology and architecture, the shaping the space. How we divide cultura and natura. This is my photo from northwest Pakistan near the Afghanistan border, where Kovar people, some Kovar communities live in such a community which is based in caves. So the centers are fireplaces, and they divide the outside and the inside with dry stone walls. So this is also a basic form when you make the human territory inside, and the focus is the fireplace, not in the middle. That's why I don't say the middle. The focus. It depends on the environmental circumstances where they should put it actually. And then shaping the nature as forming, for example, a branched terrace all over Asia. You can see such places, or much more complex from Bali to Japan. But this is in a very harsh area in the Afghan border, where there is nearly no rain. So they would be desert at all, stone deserts. But they drive the melting water from the high mountains, from the Karakoram and Himalaya, and drive them in small channels to the fields, and that's why it's like an edge, a line between the cultura and the natura, the harsh mountains and the human cultural spaces. And of course, there are some farm houses, and this is a small village, which is also a good example how to divide these two places. And as I mentioned, the fireplace is the heart of the dwelling place or dwelling houses. But not only the dwelling houses, as we will see, but even the dwelling space, the surroundings, the court, and other places as well. And this is a remain of a very old house, which has the center, the oven, and of course the chimney. And then the house disappeared because of the fires, rain, and the climate. So after the times, only the heart of the building remained, the oven. This picture was taken by László Koppány, an academic from the Hungarian Academy of Arts, who is famous for many kind of field works in Asia and in the Carpathian Basin. And one of his renowned field is the vernacular and folk architecture in Hungary. So I will have plenty of pictures of him. Gergő, a táskámból, hogyha kivesszük. And during the lecture, you can look in one of his books, which is about vernacular architecture. So this is the fireplace, the oven, which is the heart of the dwelling. But we can see other examples where the oven is outside the dwelling house, and this is also a kind of heart. They orientate the spaces around, because as even nowadays in the modern houses or in my house, most of our life is in the kitchen and in the room where we eat and talk and everything. So that is the center of the house, not the bedroom or the so-called living room. normally, most of the life was centered around here. These are other examples where we can see very basic and robust forms and shapes of these open-air ovens. They are also in Hungary in different spaces. So that's why we should tell something about the patterns and the inventions. This is an everlasting dispute, which is more important, the local inventions or the diffusion of the patterns and so on. I think certainly there is a changing balance between the two. For example, with these kind of ovens, certainly we can make a typology and the diffusion of such forms, how reached and spread all across the Hungarian plain. These are from the Hungarian plain, but there are such much more elementary or much more basic forms, which has only patterns with cognitive, very instinctual forms. For example, this doghouse, which is a round shape, and another is a shepherd's shelter, a shepherd's hut, which is really very simple. And now we can make an interruption in this argument to show that what is the yurt? The yurt is the most important felt-make mobile house, or somebody call it tent, but I think it's not a correct word for it. The yurt is for thousands of years a symbolic dwelling place for equestrian nomads. Equestrian nomads started that bridge between east and west, north and south in Eurasia in the turn of the Bronze Age and the Iron Age, so approximately more than 3,000 years ago. But this kind of dwelling houses has several kind of types all around, which is nowadays in Eurasia mostly, and from Mongolia to Kazakhstan and even Kalmykia in Eastern Europe, which is the only Buddhist country in Europe, Kalmykia. The interruption, second page, is the yurt, has a wooden structure, and it's very, very stable. Even the strongest wind and even the hardest climate cannot affect, only the humidity and the rain, which is against it. So when any equestrian nomads came to the Hungarian, to the Carpathian Basin, Sarmatians, Huns, Avars, Hungarians, and so on, after one or maximum 2 generations, they left the yurt, because the Carpathian Basin is much more humid than the Eurasian steppe. The Eurasian steppe has very big temperature differences during the summer and the winter. In the winter, there are -30, -40 degrees centigrade, and they can also live in the yurt in -40. And then in the summertime, the plus 35 or even plus 40 is not rare. So that's why the yurt is really a genius option for living in the steppe. This grassland has enormous places where they move from one place to another, but in a very strict order. They don't look for places just for occasionally, but they know very well that which is this clans or that lineage or that tribe's territory. Where are the wells? Where are the water sources and supplies? And sometimes these weather changes cause difference in the waters and in the natural environment, and that's why they had to look very far. Sometimes they travel 1,000 kilometers per year from the summer and the winter dwelling place, with thousands of horses and 10,000s of sheep and cows. And the yurt, of course, can be carried quite easily there, and it is covered with a woolen felt. And I lived in this yurt in this summer for nearly a little bit more, for nearly a month in Mongolia with my daughter and my family. And it was really a very good time. Not for me, I tried it several times, but my daughter also said that this round circle place is very gives a real home feel. So the circle, but I started my argumentation from the human body, and the circle in the yurt, and of course the setting, the functions and the places around. So this is the basic point, I think, for architecture as well. And another example, when there is a stone house in North Pakistan, but because they left the yurts in the last some decades, but they kept the middle open-air wooden structure of the yurt, and their house is such like a yurt. As you enter, the order of the places are as the yurt. The window is not on the side, but in the middle on the roof. And they put symbolically this round smoke hole of the yurt to the house, to the stone house as well. And then we can see several other places from that territory in Hunza and the Kalash villages. And this is another example. Hutches, which form this is in the Carpathian Basin and also from the László Koppány book. These are also round structures and form a very elementary, very basic structure as a like the bee house. These are also small round hutches in the Carpathian Basin. And then dovecote. Dovecotes has also very many kinds of main structural forms, but we can make regional differences how they build it because of the materials they found around the village and around the farm. This picture, let's see a little bit closer. This picture I took yesterday in Köveskál. When we saw the washing house, I went one street from the bus, and I found this very old wooden dovecote. So and then I asked the people who live there that, oh, what is that? Ah, that is an old dovecote. We don't know what to do with that. Do you want it? So, okay, maybe, but I make a picture, okay, that is the first. And then, this is from the Hungarian plain. As you see, there are very robust columns and many pigeons there. And then the maize barns for corns. There are several kinds of maize barns in the Carpathian Basin. The one type is where the maize bars itself, the corridor, the fence of the house. This is very typical. So we can find such maize bars not only in the Hungarian plain, but in other territories, west and south as well. And then there are another kind, this very robust, nearly megalithic, strong. It's not so functional. They don't need so strong, robust columns in the side. But somehow they wanted to make it close to their visual mother tongue. So that's it. That's what it is. The second important thing, that one is to shape the nature, forming a human space and humanized space. The other is keeping our visual or other kind of mother tongue within the forms, within the symbols and the patterns as well. These kind of maize bars also with such very robust columns, and they symbolize the wealth of the family as well. If somebody has many chickens and many animals, they need the supply for the winter months. And then we can see a kaleidoscope of pictures. I didn't want to put them alone because there are so many examples that the round circles, the lines, the squares as symbols we can find even from cemeteries, like in the upper left picture and in the middle. That is in northwest Pakistan, the Kalash cemetery with wooden structures. And then we can find, for example, this kind of shape, which is like a ziggurat, like an old pyramid from the Mesopotamia. With in the middle, in the front, there is a very long steep steps, and then some like stepping forms form a square ground. It's very similar to the Mesopotamian pyramids. It is about 2,000 years old in West China, in Xinjiang. Xinjiang was a very important territory in the Iron Age and during the Silk Road period. Really cultural and material values transported in that territory very fast, and of course the patterns of culture as well. But even though they kept many kind of cultural patterns and this traditional materials and traditional ways of decorations. So that's why when we are thinking about vernacular, when we are thinking about patterns and innovations and inventions, there are two kinds of theories. One kind of theory is the diffusion, that all the cultural inventions spread genealogically in a not a linear but like a tree way. That was the symbolic person Thor Heyerdahl, for example, who wanted to prove that the pyramids and then other cultural elements, how they transported from the old world to the new world, to America and even to Oceania. But now there is another theory now that there are parallel, even based on the cognitive structures and based on the pragmatic, very pragmatic logic based on the materials, the environment, and the human body. So we have symbols. We don't need very far distinct genealogical migration of patterns. It is enough to look on ourselves, and on the base of the human body, we can step back to the real elementary cognitive forms of making circles, making lines, and making difference from positions. And that's why there are many parallel inventions which is seemingly connected, but connected from the humankind ourselves. So we can really list many more examples how the humanized environment is transporting. For example, they shape the nature as roads or fortifications, settlements, dams, dikes, or artificial lakes. It is hard to imagine, but even in the Gobi Desert, in the border of China and Mongolia, there are huge dozens of square kilometers surface artificial lakes from the Bronze Age and Iron Age. Or for example, in the Carpathian Basin, in the 11th and 12th and 13th century, there were much more artificial lakes than nowadays. There were much more fishing and other activities made by dams by the village people, and they drove the water when it's high to special places just for having supply for the dry months. So this kind of knowledge was not an elite and very high position architectural knowledge. This was a knowledge from the vernacular culture and the ordinary people, because that was the key for their survival. So we should not think about peasant society. We should not think about the old age, the old ages. They has that knowledge which was important for their survival. And when we think about artificial lakes or dikes, we can learn from that kind of agriculture, because those kind of values which now we have in our focus, like sustainability, recycling, and so on. So having material from the surrounding area we should use again and rebuild again. But we had a very good example in Tallinn direct yesterday. It was like a Lego. Lego from the Celtic ages, then the Roman ages. The house collapsed. The stones were rebuilt in another kind, another style. And it was of course extended with other kind of bricks, and certainly. But some stones remained from the Roman age, from the Celtic age, or from the Middle Ages. And they put together again in the 18th century when the territory was repopulated again. So we always built on this Lego knowledge of the vernacular. So that's what I wanted to tell. If there is any question, don't hesitate.